Okay, so this is going to be my review of the documentary released, Kobe Bryant's Muse. Actually, a fairly interesting documentary. I didn't plan on reviewing, having seen it quite a few times over the past few months being aired on Showtime. I figured why not, especially since this documentary, I think, provides pretty interesting insight into Kobe Bryant's career on and off the court. We get a pretty in-depth look of his personal life, I think in a way that I haven't seen done before in a documentary, specifically based on an athlete. So I thought it was pretty interesting. So general plot of this film, we start the documentary off pretty much that now I think playoff game that everyone's familiar with where he tore his Achilles. It kind of jumps off from there. We immediately go into post-surgery. Follow him along as he narrates his documentary, his rehabilitation process of getting himself back to 100% so that way he can play again. Once we initially see that injury and him kind of rehabbing, jump back to growing up around his father in Italy before he began to play basketball. What motivates him? Why did he aspire to reach the particular levels of greatness that he did? And that I thought was really interesting part of the documentary. So I'm going to cover some positives and some negatives, essentially why I just think this is worth watching. Now, going into some positives that I had with the documentary, there were a lot actually. There were a lot mainly because we saw a different side of Kobe Bryant we typically see portrayed by the media. We saw a different side of Kobe Bryant that I don't think we typically see portrayed by him during certain interviews and whatnot that he'll do before and after games. I thought him kind of just laid back in a more natural environment, specifically talking about some key moments in his basketball career, actually did a lot to not only shed some light on issues that happened in the past, exactly how he felt about some of those issues. It's one thing to get up in front of the media and say that you're sorry for something, say that you did something because of this reason or you did something because of that reason. It's another thing to genuinely feel like that individual feels a certain way based on the emotions that they're emitting on camera, and that's kind of something that I got from this documentary. His narration obviously would be one of the big standout points of this documentary. He narrates the entire thing, his narration highlighting some of these specific points of his career over the 18 years that he spent in the NBA. Another positive that I noticed in the documentary was we got a chance to see him interacting and speaking more casually about his family in a way that we had never seen him do before. And so, again, obviously family is something that usually everyone holds pretty close to them, but I think in this particular documentary we were able to see exactly how much his family meant to him right off the bat. Right when he injures his Achilles and his wife and kids come to kind of, comfort him, he just breaks down. He breaks down completely, and we're able to see in that particular moment how much he cares about the people that are closest to him. I thought that was kind of a different side of Kobe Bryant that we don't typically see. So another positive that I saw, finally getting that opportunity to start coming off the bench. He had been on the bench for a long time, and I kind of remember this being a little bit younger. I don't remember it too well because at the time I wasn't really all that into basketball, but I do remember him signing with the Lakers. I remember him being benched for a while before he really got the opportunity to play. At this particular moment during the playoffs, when he was given the opportunity to kind of close the game out, the game was close with Utah. He ends up missing, I think, 4 different shots. He shoots 4 air balls. We see exactly how much that affected him by his direct actions after that game. So they fly back home, and his immediate thing to do is to go to his old high school. I think in the documentary he said something about the janitor was working late night and he recognized him and he let him into the gymnasium so that way he can just shoot around. That entire night, he spent that entire night just shooting the ball. That was definitely something that I thought was interesting. I'm happy that it was shown in the documentary because, again, this is another side of, I think, a intricate, polarizing athlete of the past generation in a completely different light that we hadn't seen him in before. We see exactly how dedicated he is, how concerned with his game he is. He knew at that particular point that most people were probably going to write him off given that was the first opportunity that he had gotten off the bench. And those air balls, he did not want to dictate what people were going to be saying about him and basically how his career was going to go from there on out. We obviously know that Kobe Bryant, I mean, come on, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. We know that he's dedicated. I mean, there's dedication and then there's obsession mixed with that. And I think it's at that point that I kind of personally was able to realize, okay, he's dedicated, but then his obsession drives him to get to a certain level that only, I think, a handful of athletes ever achieve. If anyone's going to dictate how this guy's career or how this guy's future is going to go, it's going to be him. It's going to be Kobe Bryant that does that. That was one thing that I really did enjoy about this particular portion of the documentary. The events that took place in that playoff game against Utah, that kind of initially sparked and jumpstart his initial huge jump in progression. Because the following year after that was, as we all know, were the year that he just completely went wild. And so definitely a final thing that I want to talk about, or a final positive that I have with the documentary, a lot of the hardship that he faced in his career deals with him not being a perfect individual. What I mean by him not being a perfect individual is obviously no one's perfect, but for the level of greatness that he's achieved in hindsight, I think it's easier for individuals to look and say, well, of course that skill, or of course that talent was always there. So there was kind of already like a path laid out for him to achieve that level of greatness no matter what. I think the exact opposite is proved in this documentary by him showing us a lot of the key moments in his career early on that led to him doing things that he might not have done had he not have failed as hard as he did. The film does a great job of kind of humanizing a somewhat unrelatable athlete over the past generation. Early on in his career, he goes back to his old neighborhood, or he takes a drive through the old college town that he grew up around, and he would look at college kids having fun on the weekend and wonder if he had made the right choice of skipping college and going to the NBA. There were points in his career early on, he could have easily have made that left turn instead of the right turn and ended up where he ultimately did. And I think that's one thing that this documentary does a really good job at pointing out, is that he's not perfect, and he never was perfect. It was some of those key moments in his career early on that led to him doing things that were able to push him to that next level, that were able to take him to that next level and become that next tier of player. You didn't get the sense that you were watching someone who was naturally gifted, even though there was some obviously natural talent involved in there. He was born with a certain set of skills. Essentially, anyone can be born with that certain set of skills. A matter of how much time you spend to craft those skills that you're obviously born with, that determine essentially the outcome when you're older. There were people that he grew up with that had that potential that he had. You all have to make a choice. You all come to that particular crossroad, and you have to choose which direction you want to go. Do you want to go left, or do you want to go right? Some people want to go left. They want to be doctors. They want to be lawyers. That's going to be their job for the rest of their life. He wanted to go the other direction. He wanted to learn from the greatest basketball players. He wanted to learn from Magic. He wanted to learn from Bird. He wanted to learn from MJ. He wanted to take his game to that next level. And in order for him to do that, it required him, with that certain set of skills that he had, to work on them over and over and over again and evolve them to that next tier. So going into some negatives that I had with this documentary, I would have definitely loved to have seen more interviews with players that he played with, some more interviews with Michael Jordan, different coaches like Phil that coached him throughout his career, some more interviews with players that obviously he sought out for some guidance and mentorship like Bird and Magic. Overall, this was kind of like a one-man show. It was specifically from his point of view. He was narrating the entire thing. I would have liked to have seen some other people, some other athletes kind of come in and chime in on how they felt about his career over the past 18 years, because us not having some of those other interviews from players that played with him and coaches that coached him kept it from that extra layer of depth regarding Kobe Bryant's character and his mentality behind, why it was that he did some of the things when he did, specifically on and off the court. Other than that, that would be my only real big negative with the documentary. I thought it was cut perfectly. Overall, I really, really did enjoy the documentary. So if you have Showtime, I definitely recommend you guys watching it, seeing as it is free if you're already paying for that premium cable subscription. I think it's really worth a watch. I really enjoyed this kind of portrayal of Kobe Bryant that we see in the documentary. It's one that I haven't seen before. He's got as many haters as he has fans. I admit it, I'm admittedly a hater and a fan, but I definitely respect the greatness. Again, I definitely recommend this. I give it my solid stamp of approval. So if you guys are looking for something to kind of watch on the weekend, and you're into documentaries like me and it just happens to be on, I definitely recommend you check it out. Other than that, I really appreciate it, guys. If you did like this review, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe for some more reviews coming later on this week. There will definitely be quite a few going up. Got Tomorrowland coming up, and then I also have Ex Machina coming up as well. Again, I appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.